Hey guys, I had like a week off, and as things tend to happen, the time that I wasn't on social media was when so many things happened that I probably would have been talking about. So I kind of wanted to do this video. I wasn't actually planning on doing one until next week, but I have so much to talk about and so much to share with you. Let's just get into it because honestly, there's so much to go over. Firstly, welcome back to my channel or my podcast, wherever you're watching or listening to this on. Please subscribe if you like this content. And yeah, let's move on because I have to show you this thing from Reddit. So I was just browsing Reddit. I don't go on that often. And this random video popped up, and if you're listening to this as a podcast, I'll try to describe it, but honestly, you should probably look at your screen. Basically, it's a video showing a lot of different women using treadmills to show off clothing, and it seems from the context of the video plus what people were posting online that it's in rural China, and these people are trying to sell clothes online, maybe via TikTok Live, but that's not really confirmed. Like I said, there's not really much context that comes with this video, so I'm not 100% sure whether the people are working for a specific company or whether it's one of those content farms that some people have mentioned in the comments as being quite common. As someone who doesn't really go on TikTok Live because it's not really my thing, I've never been on the receiving end of one of these live streams and seen what it looks like on a phone. I assume they changed the backgrounds to something more aesthetic and also to cut the other people out. But it just feels very dystopian. The idea of multiple people spending hours at a time walking on treadmills in heels and dresses, trying to get you to buy the products so they can get an affiliate link or because they're directly employed by the brand. I'm not, again, 100% sure of the situation. Just feels so pushy. I mean, I've covered in a video before about the specific issues I have with live stream shopping, but to summarize, they pretty much encourage you to impulse buy. Obviously, it's not a new thing. You have shopping channels on your TV, but having them on your phone is so much more dangerous when we consider the fact that the experience of buying something on your phone is frictionless, especially compared to having to pause your TV, pick up your phone, call a number, and talk to someone over the phone like you would in a shopping channel. Obviously, there's no real way of seeing the quality of the clothing they're pushing, but there is the assumption that it's not going to be that good quality. It certainly looks like there's a lot of it, which indicates that it's from a fast fashion company that's producing a lot of different styles, or that these creators have compiled a lot of different styles from different companies and are pushing all of them onto consumers. So even though we don't have the exact context, I feel like it's safe to say that this is not a sustainable practice whatsoever. And the content they're creating is perpetuating a mindless consumption mindset. I don't know, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I think this has been around for a while, but I just saw this video pop up on my Reddit feed. I read an article recently just before I saw this, so it kind of put it into context for me. But TikTok has been encouraging vendors to hold live streams up to 8 or 10 hours, basically wanting them to hold longer and more frequent live streams. And they've been offering tools like AI scripts in order to help vendors do that. Clearly, that's because TikTok sees a return on live stream shopping. They see a lot of people purchasing through the app and they want to encourage that behavior. So it just goes to show that even if the live streaming video I just showed looks like a weird scenario to you and me in our little sustainable fashion bubble, it's clearly working on some people and TikTok sees it as a viable investment, which is worrying. Okay, next thing that happened while I was away was SHEIN launched a new campaign. And the way I found out about this was a tweet from journalist Sophie Benson, who said, SHEIN wants us all to get in the haul a day spirit, like haul, Haul, and then a day. You get it. With its early access Black Friday sale running from now until 30th of December, the brand will continuously roll out discounts of up to 90% off 300,000 plus items, further eroding the value of clothes one discount at a time. I think Sophie summed up the idea really well there. I mean, yeah, not only are SHEIN continuously producing way more clothes than is ever going to be needed, not for our generation, but for the next 10 generations, they're encouraging us to keep consuming this content by discounting it even further from what it was. I mean, 90% off clothing is insane, and it does further warp our idea of what clothing should cost. It's very hard to convert people over from shopping SHEIN and like-minded companies when they're being offered discounts like 90% off a £10 top versus paying for something much, much better quality but will cost them a lot more. And the thing is, SHEIN knows what they're doing here. They're undercutting the entire market so that other brands cannot compete with their pricing structure, because what other brand can realistically justify 90% off their merchandise other than Temu maybe? And then once those companies are out of business or companies have pivoted to a higher pricing structure, and I'm specifically thinking about H&M, Zara, SHEIN can then come swoop back in and raise their prices, knowing that there's no other competitors and people have to swallow the costs. I mean, we've already started to see it with SHEIN raising their prices. So not only is this single campaign really annoying, but the concept of Black Friday in itself, the whole thing is founded on impulse purchases and getting you to believe there's discounts to be had when really there isn't. And there's been a lot of studies that show that brands are making out that something is a deal when it's in fact not. I obviously get that having access to deals during a cost of living crisis and with Christmas coming up is important. I do tend to make purchases that I've been thinking about for a while during Black Friday because of those deals, but it's the messages like SHEIN's of mindless consumption, 90% off, why wouldn't you shop, that is particularly damaging. Another tweet that I saw that is kind of linked to this is about mindless production in general. I mean, SHEIN definitely is in that category of companies that are mindlessly producing way too much stuff. But another example from a tweet I saw spoke about popcorn buckets and how they've become a surprising new marketing strategy for cinema companies, and it's just kind of gotten out of hand. The original tweet was around a Gladiator 2 popcorn bucket, which is basically showing a classic arena, a QR code that comes with the bucket that activates an AR gladiator battle. And I mean, like, does anyone need that? Maybe it's fun. The tweet I saw was, I know I'm a hater, but do we have to keep inventing new categories of destined for landfill objects? And yeah, this was like immediately what I thought of when I saw this popcorn bucket too. It's like, is someone keeping this for life? Is this going to become like a collector's item that sits in someone's room for ages? And I mean, yeah, people like to collect stuff. People have stamps. Fine. If collecting popcorn buckets like the June one has become your new hobby, then okay. But like, why are we producing popcorn buckets specific to movies that will be thrown away most likely by like 90% of the people that buy them? It just seems silly, and it just seems like another way brands can upsell us stuff that we don't need and charge more for it, whilst also polluting the planet. And I don't even know what these are made of, to be fair. If they're paper, maybe they can be recycled. But even if they are, producing stuff like this just for the sake of it still feels weird to me. Next thing on my list was a Instagram DM I received from a subscriber called Anna, who wanted me to talk about brands pushing vegan fabrics as a sustainable alternative without mentioning that they're often synthetic options. And she specifically pointed out the example of an ad she saw from the brand House of Sunny showcasing their vegan knitwear that was actually acrylic polyester based. And I had a look into this, specifically House of Sunny, because a marketing slogan that is so loud and proud about vegan knitwear is a bold statement to make. You are definitely trying to put in the consumer's mind a certain image for your brand as being wholesome, as being good for the planet because it's vegan, and good for animals because it's vegan. And the fact that these vegan sweaters are actually made from oil-based materials does feel very greenwashy. I'm just basically thinking they're trying to give off this certain wholesome granola mom, like cares for the planet image, But using that phrase vegan knitwear to talk about your polyester sweaters is not great for the consumer to think that they're purchasing something that's, you know, environmentally friendly, or, you know, just the connotations that come with the word vegan, right? Good for you, good for the planet. And then look further into the product and see acrylic as like the main fabric. It's very misleading, I think. And it's very intentional from the brand on what they're trying to do. As Anna summed up, it's a gross marketing strategy. Okay, we're back to Twitter because I saw this tweet that I found really interesting, and I'll explain it, but let's talk about the tweet first. I can never date a woman wearing SHEIN. That's the same thing as littering. And this is such a bold statement. And I kind of see where you're coming from, right? We're talking about the environmental impact of SHEIN and the amount they produce and the amount they contribute to clothing waste and landfill sites, and just the overall general take, make, waste model that they are founded on. Like, yeah, I see what they're talking about, like contributing to that business model, supporting that business model when you don't have to, is kind of the same thing as littering, right? Knowing that you're doing a haul, that you're not going to hang on to these clothes you're creating and you're just going to throw them away to buy more, is kind of the same behavior as littering. Like I can see the link. You're not thinking about the consequences of your actions and how it's going to impact the environment. But just like I said in my last podcast, Twitter did its thing, and the conversation that initially started, and to be fair, it's a vague, bold statement that does kind of pick at certain people. So yeah, I can understand why people would be upset. But immediately it boiled down into a dogfight, into a conversation around affordability, into all those things that happen with a SHEIN debate, and you have one side and you have the other, and they're going at each other. And saying a statement like this isn't going to encourage change from people who see this, who shop SHEIN. Like, I understand the frustration as a sustainable shopper myself when I see SHEIN hauls online and think, how could you be shopping from these places and shopping so much? Like, I understand that frustration, but tweeting something like this does just feel intentionally inflammatory. And I wonder, to be honest, if this is more of a reflection of Twitter's culture right now. Like, all I see on my feed is just one hot take after the other, and people purposely trying to like rile each other up just so they get engagement. And, you know, just the general atmosphere on Twitter right now isn't great. And I've been thinking about leaving it for this reason. Like, I don't like what I see on the platform. That might just be my personal experience on Twitter. I don't know. I'd love to know if you guys are feeling the same and what you're using instead. But yeah, I saw this and I immediately just thought, like, are we doing this again? I knew, basically, without even opening the tweet, I knew what the replies would be. I knew what the replies to those replies would be. It just feels like a dog chasing its tail, right? Like, we need to stop shaming each other. We need to focus on shaming companies. And that doesn't excuse the people that are shopping SHEIN for hauls. It just means I don't think we're getting anything out of constantly picking at each other. Okay, moving on slightly, not really, because we're still talking about SHEIN. But I was back on Reddit another day and I found another thing that I wanted to mention. Basically, I saw a Reddit thread from the subreddit Depop, which the initial post was about someone that got scammed by a SHEIN reseller and was a little bit mad, didn't realize until they reverse image searched after they bought it. And the way the buyer found out was another buyer from the seller reached out and said, by the way, this seller is selling SHEIN drop shipping, like you might have been scammed. So the buyer confronted the seller and the seller wanted to know who it was that had snitched on them. Anyway, in the comments of that post, People were talking about how to resell SHEIN on Depop and on secondhand platforms. And someone was saying that they were unsure about listing their items from SHEIN on resale platforms because they didn't want people to think it was a scam. They asked if it would be bad if they still disclosed that it was SHEIN, but would people think that they were trying to scam them and that they weren't buying SHEIN in the first place? And yeah, obviously there's an easy solution to this, which is disclose very clearly that this is a SHEIN item, both in the pictures and the description. And yeah, just let people know that where they're buying from, which is what dropshippers don't do. But it kind of got me thinking about the idea that people who shop SHEIN, whether they are doing haul content or whether they're just buying one or two pieces, might feel a sense of shame when it comes to reselling them on secondhand websites. And maybe it might stop them from posting them on secondhand websites. And that kind of was quite worrying to me. I mean, I know that secondhand websites are flooded with SHEIN items. So it suggests that for a lot of people, this isn't an issue. Whether they're getting bought is a whole separate issue. Because the perception of it being bad quality is so well known, I don't know that people would necessarily jump at the chance to own it secondhand. But maybe there's a whole other demographic out there as well that doesn't feel comfortable relisting their secondhand SHEIN, either because they feel a sense of shame or because they think people will think they're scamming them, or because they just think it won't sell. And those items are going straight to landfill. And there's two kind of things I want to say to this. One, even if you have SHEIN items that you don't want anymore, do not send them to landfill. Try resell them. There may be people out there that will buy them, probably heavily discounted, like this person wanted to sell it for $2. I think that's a fair price. Two is how much SHEIN gets away with the fact that they're bad quality. Like morally, how does the billionaire CEO of SHEIN not feel bad about the fact that landfills are clogging up with clothing from his company? And one silver lining to this, I guess, is the introduction of a lot of new legislation around extended product liability, and the fact that brands are now going to have to be a lot more hands-on when it comes to tackling clothing waste, which should mean that reselling gets a lot easier and that brands are designing with longevity in mind in the first place. So clothing quality goes up, people maybe keep their clothes for longer, or they have an easier time reselling them. And I guess for SHEIN, that just can't come soon enough. Like, all fast fashion is in a bad spot right now, but damn, ultra fast fashion companies, it's bad out here. Okay, next thing I wanted to point out was really kind of interesting. When I saw this headline, I immediately kind of read up all I could about it, and I want to talk to you about it now. So, the first woman on the moon is going to be wearing a spacesuit partly designed by Prada. And this immediately kind of sounds like exciting news, fashion going into space travel. However, my next immediate reaction was, are we going to be making unsustainable fashion interstellar? And here's my thoughts. Apparently, the suits are going to be made with long-lasting and high-quality materials. That means that they should be able to withstand the journey into space and come back and be fine, maybe even be used again. This is obviously really good PR for Prada, who knows that being linked to this kind of project gives them a certain perception of technological advancement in fashion. And experts think that this will help put them at the front of sustainability and technology in consumers' eyes. The issue with that is that Prada is not the most sustainable company. They definitely aren't the worst, and they have a lot of high-profile cases of being sustainable, but they are certainly lagging in some areas. For example, Good On You rates them not good enough, specifically citing the issues of their hazardous chemical use and their lack of transparency in their supply chain. If we also go back to that report I did a specific video on called What Fuels Fashion, Prada scored middle of the pack when it comes to overall sustainability. But they were also named as one of the brands that had signed up to set long-term climate targets to limit the global warming to 1.5 degrees in line with the Paris Agreement. But they had failed to actually set those targets and make them company policy before the deadline, basically meaning that they're regressing on their climate targets, like we're seeing a lot in the fashion industry right now, which is very interesting when you consider that the narrative around this space project is including sustainability and making Prada out to be someone who cares about sustainability. In fact, one of the articles I was reading on this, one thing they mentioned that I wanted to share, which I thought was really dystopian, was they said the advanced materials created for spacesuits could eventually be adapted into everyday heat-resistant clothing. This will become increasingly important in the context of climate change, meaning that the materials Prada were developing could be useful if we go above the 1.5 degree heating point and we have to deal with more extreme cases of heat here on Earth, which is interesting considering Prada was one of the companies that failed to set long-term targets that tried to slow global warming. I mean, there's a disconnect there, right? Why are you creating materials that can tackle a problem that could have been solved by you committing to better climate practices in the first place? All this to say, basically, I think we should be looking into this step a little bit more before we start praising Prada for their sustainability. The Prada news kind of links into this wider industry trend in luxury fashion, with brands expanding their horizons as to what fashion should be or what fashion should encompass. We've seen a lot of brands breaking into sport, breaking into space like this, trying to basically get out of a sinking fashion sector. And we know that that sector is sinking because lots of fashion houses have recently reported declines in their Q3 earnings. And there's a general anxiety amongst fashion experts right now that the luxury sector is slowing. I say this in air quotes because they're still making millions and millions of pounds. But apparently that's not enough. If we're not growing for growth's sake, then let's all panic. But yeah, I just think it's interesting that instead of looking at why people aren't buying fashion from luxury brands, mainly because of the bag quality, like I covered in my other video, and because the prices are too high, and because their climate commitments aren't there, and customers are starting to care more and more about that, and they're not delivering, they're instead trying to find new ways to reach us and market towards us. And this is coming out in very, very weird collaborations. I mean, Prada and spacesuits, you have Chanel sponsoring the boat race, you have LVMH sponsoring the Grand Prix and working with Lewis Hamilton. It's just this kind of disconnect, I feel, between what luxury needs to do and what it believes it should be doing. There's no one there that's kind of thinking like, oh, maybe we should tackle the root of why consumers aren't buying and respond to that. It's instead, how can we shove ourselves in their faces in even more context so they're constantly thinking about us and maybe they'll be tricked into buying a luxury handbag. I don't know. It just seems silly. One other comment I got on Instagram DMs that I wanted to share because I need your guys' help is this one from Nina. She said, I was thinking about fashion dupes versus original design, and I was wondering if you know any dupes out there that are better than the original, not potentially considering price point, but purely design or quality wise. And I basically wrote back and said, like, I have no idea. But I thought this was a really interesting question and I wanted to put it to you guys to know if you have any ideas about better quality or design items that are dupes of an original design that wasn't that good. Also, I love that you guys are asking me questions in my Instagram DMs and, you know, suggesting stuff. So feel free to do that, because it's really fun to know what you guys want me to talk about, and also to not have to always look for stories. I mean, if they're being given to me on a silver platter, I'm not going to say no. But thank you so much to the people that have done that already, and to Nina and Anna, who gave some really good suggestions. Okay, to round off this video, I wanted to talk about 2 more things. One was the thrifting I did in Norway, which was so insanely good. I didn't buy anything. I'm just going to put that out there, because nothing was perfect. But the quality of the items I saw in some shops was really, really surprising. It was almost better than what you can get here in the UK, or for my local charity shops anyway. I went into this one vintage store, and the amount of great quality wool sweaters I saw was insane. And I know a few of you commented on another video I did where I was talking about the cable knit sweater I want, saying that Norway would probably have what I was looking for, and it almost did. Like, there were so many really close items that probably would have been fine, but they weren't absolutely perfect, so I left them behind. But yeah, I was just so surprised at the quality of what you can find in Norway and the sweaters. I mean, the price points were higher than here in the UK. I would say like the price point of the 1 or 2 stores I went into was maybe like 60 to 100 pounds, versus here in the UK I'd say it's more 30 to 50, like just off the top of my head. So yeah, a little bit more expensive. I found Norway was quite a bit more expensive anyway, just the culture there, so maybe that explains it. But yeah, thank you to everyone who said go thrifting in Norway, because I might not have made time for it otherwise, and I was so pleasantly surprised by what I found. Okay, the last thing that I wanted to mention was Halloween, because I had to buy stuff for my Halloween costume this year from Amazon, and I don't like it, but I had to do it, and I'll explain why. Basically, before we left for our trip, we said to our friends, let's go out for a night out for Halloween, let's all dress up. And I kind of forgot about that. And then it was right before Norway that I remembered I didn't have time to plan an outfit before we left. And I was trying to do it over there in Norway. And then we came back, and it's like the day before now. It will be after by the time I post this. But yeah, the time frame and me forgetting and me trying to like prepare for Norway just meant that I had basically no options when it came to finding something I needed. Because the stress of finding an outfit in the first place for Halloween is massive. And then the added pressure of finding something in my wardrobe or finding something to rent was just too much. It was stressing me out way too much. But basically what I have decided is I am going as Mia Thermopolis from Princess Diaries this year. I've rented a white dress and I'm borrowing headphones, but I've had to buy white satin gloves and I've had to buy a tiara from Amazon, which I obviously didn't want to do, but I just, like, in the end, it was just stressing me out too much. So what I've decided to do, instead of like making myself feel bad about it and trying to hide it so I look perfectly sustainable or whatever online, is I'm going to make those 2 outfits that I had to buy part of my costume for the next however many years I can. Like, I already have ideas for the next 2 or 3 Halloweens of how I can repurpose this crown and these satin gloves into a new outfit. So I think that's what I'm going to do, instead of like feeling bad or like, you know, saying to my friends I'm not going to do a costume, or, you know, just like generally getting myself in a tizzy about it. Like, I'm going to see it as items that will stay in my Halloween wardrobe instead, I guess, and will be reworn again and again. And I guess if I have kids, they can use them for dress ups. You know, like, I'm just trying to view it as more of a, okay, this has happened, how can I make it as sustainable as possible, rather than beat myself up about it and tell myself it wasn't a sustainable option and I should have been better and I should have managed my time better and whatever. Like, I honestly, when I say it was actually getting me so stressed trying to find a Halloween costume, I just thought this isn't worth it. I'm not going to enjoy it on the day. But I guess I wanted to share that because I do feel like there is a certain pressure around Halloween, and I don't feel like there's a lot of options for making it that sustainable right now. I mean, obviously you can do what I do and rent your clothing, but a lot of Halloween comes from accessories. I mean, I don't know if we go through some random Halloween costumes like a witch, right? You can rent a black dress, but if you don't have a pointy hat, then you're not really a witch. And like, unless you know someone who owns a pointy hat already, and believe me, I tried to find someone who had a tiara and white gloves, and I went back and forth between so many different costumes trying to find a version of something that I could rent the clothing and borrow the accessories from someone I knew, and it didn't work out. But like, anyway, like the accessories is often what makes a Halloween outfit. Maybe the makeup too, but I'm not massively good at makeup, so that wouldn't really work for me. But yeah, I feel like there needs to be more sustainable options around Halloween. And I did actually find something online just purely by accident when I was in Norway again, which was a Halloween costume clothing swap that was hosted in Canada. I don't know if it was for adults too, it was certainly for kids. And it just looked like such a good idea. I mean, I know a lot of people buy a Halloween costume and then don't wear it again. There's been a lot of statistics I've been seeing online recently about how wasteful Halloween culture is. And this seems like a really good solution. I mean, doing it with your friends, doing it with your like community. If you have like a community center, you could do this. Just feels like a really good way of combating a wasteful holiday and still getting to enjoy it. Like, you know, you just swap Halloween costumes and you can wear something new and fun every year. Maybe in the years after I've run out of ideas for my tiara and gloves, I can have a look into an event happening near me that's for this and report back. But yeah, for the next 2 or 3 Halloweens, you're going to see me wearing the same tiara and the same pair of gloves. But yeah, I guess I did want to share that because so often we can beat ourselves up when we're not perfectly sustainable. And I think it's just not productive. Like, you can't be sustainable all the time and you can only do your best. And my best at this point is using the stuff that I bought as much as possible. And that's what I'm going to do. So yeah, I'd love to know what you guys are wearing for Halloween, and also any ideas you have for future Halloweens for me with my gloves and tiara, because I will be needing those in the future. But yeah, have a lovely, lovely day. New video out next week, which is going to be a little bit more structured. I don't know how you guys are feeling about these rambling posts. Some of you seem to absolutely love them. So thank you to those people, and thank you to those people that don't necessarily love them but still listen. I hope they're still useful, even though I'm rambling half the time. Okay, I'm going to go now. Speak to you soon. Bye.